Hi everyone, welcome back after vacation period to our next session of UI5ers Live for September 2023. Today we are joined by one special guest, that's Benedikt Schoelch. He's the product owner of the team that is developing the new MDC controls, and that's exactly what he will be talking about. So say hi to Benedikt, and Benedikt, say hi to us.
Hi guys, and thanks for giving me the chance to present the topic here today.
You're very welcome. And as always, we have Stefan Beck, that's our Chief Product Owner of UI5. Welcome.
Hello.
And of course, Peter Muessig, our Chief Architect, who will also be a presenter today and demonstrate how UI5 and CAP, the Cloud Application Programming Model, can play better together. Hi, Peter.
Hi, everyone.
Okay, and I, Andreas Kunz, will be your host today as Margot is away and lead you through the session. So let's start with Benedikt, I'd say. So what is this MDC library exactly? What's new about it now, and what is it useful for?
So here we are. This is the sap.ui.mdc library, and it's our new library for, let's say, smart controls, or more or less for building smart controls. We've shown this already a few months ago, I think, on the UI5Con very initially when it was just released. And yeah, just for those who didn't watch that talk or who are not too much aware of it, I would like to give a little refresher. What is sap.ui.mdc? Library is made for efficient application development, which means, yeah, you can develop applications with it in an efficient way, or you can also enable other people to develop applications in a very efficient way by being a foundation for metadata-driven controls. So if you have some specific metadata providing service and you like to have like an application scaffolding on top of it, like a frame of, let's say, a basic initial controls, MDC is the way to go. It can be used with any UI5 model that you know and any data protocol. It's completely extensible, and you can actually plug in whatever you want if you build the corresponding adapter, which I will show later on. As I said, it's not dependent on any specific model or protocol itself. The smart controls we had for OData v2 are like tightly coupled to OData v2. That's no secret, right? But they were very popular, or they still are very popular, but with a limitation that you can only use them with OData v2. They are not accessible for a huge audience of developers. The MDCs are foundation for the sub-theory elements for OData v4, which are the equivalents to our smart controls when they are used in the flexible programming model, so-called building blocks. They have been also introduced at the UI5Con. There are videos you can watch. And yeah, I would say if you are going with OData v4 applications, this is the way to go. MDC is in the package already. You don't have to do MDC to get OData v4. That's important to know. Yeah, and I think one fact you should also know about, it's experimental. The whole library is still experimental until UI5 2.0, where we would like to do our stable release. And yeah, until then, we would encourage you to try it out, play with the samples, build some application on your own and give us the feedback. If you find anything, just drop me a mail or GitHub issue, whatever. We're going to have a look at it and see what we can do. We're still reserving the time for some API changes. Yeah. What is the library giving you as key features? So they're smart composite controls. Why are they smart? You might want to know. From our perspective, they're smart because they bundle all the really advanced, really good sub-user experience design into metadata-driven components. You don't have to care of all that stuff. You don't have to care of everything that UI5 does for you, like accessibility, themability, translatability. Everything comes out of the box in, let's say, larger composite building blocks that you can use right away. And yeah, you don't have to take care of all these things. Then yeah, that's also the second point here, the decoupling of this generic behavior, which is defined by UX from application or protocol specific requirements. You can still implement in the background what you need to do to communicate with your whatever GraphQL service or whatever you're looking at without having a specific UI for that. It looks like just the same as every other MDC or every other smart controller, every other SAP Fiori designed application. So The controls are extensible via a specific API. This is well defined in our delegates, and this is the way how you can provide the service-specific metadata. We have type definitions for that. You can find them in the demo kit. I will show it a bit later on, what I'm talking about here, and it should be pretty easy to adopt, although it's rather on a technical level. We make heavy use of XML proof processing. You can also do that. Our own controls use it with personalization. So all the changes users do with our smart controls are actually incorporated in an XML view, and can be therefore with high performance be executed at the startup of the application. And yeah, our controls also support XML templating. So if you want to incorporate that in your, let's say, reuse increments like building blocks of Fiori elements, you can also do that. That's what I already said. Personalization is supported out of the box. Support of variants for users and key users is given by our seamless integration of the sap.ui FL library. And yeah, the performance benefits, which I mentioned already, are also there.
To come back to the center block here, so when you talk about the extensibility, if you go back one slide, metadata in a unified protocol agnostic format, you really mean they can be used for data before, or they are the base for that, but they could also be adapted to any other protocol that has some kind of metadata, right?
Absolutely, yes. Has or has not metadata. I mean, it really depends on what you're doing. We had also application prototypes with the FHIR protocol. That's another open source REST protocol, mainly used in the healthcare area, medical applications. And this has also, like, I would say, rather sophisticated and extensive use of metadata. And the controls just work pretty well together with it because of this scenario. Let's say you describe additional information to your actual data is what we need and what we take over in the form of property info, which is the unified format I was talking about. This is just passed through those delegates. So actually, in the end, if you have an application implemented with MDC, you could think of just exchanging a delegate to kind of serve, instead of an OData protocol, also a FHIR protocol, if that's a use case. I mean, just as an example. Yeah, and for sure there are many different formats in the open source world. Like a JSON schema would be one example you could use to define a metadata, or any other REST protocol which has additional metadata. Yeah.
And there's already a question from Mustafa. Is the UI5 flexibility feature for MDC also available for SAP S/4HANA Cloud?
It should be available for S/4HANA Cloud. Definitely, the key user service can be used there, as far as I know. But please drop me a quick mail. I will forward you to the corresponding colleagues, and they will give you the details here.
And then there's a second question already from Marcel. Is it restricted to Fiori controls, or is it possible to make use of MDC inside a custom control or control library?
Actually, that's a really good question, because that's what what I also want to explain with the example I'm going to show. But in the end, you can use MDC to build your own control library, With Fiori controls, I just mean it's the Fiori design which we implement. You don't have to take care of it, but you can, for example, extend or wrap our control and make it your own control with the pre-built service metadata interpretation, and make a custom control or a whole custom control library. That's exactly the case. That's what Fiori Elements is doing in the end. They take our controls, wrap them in the so-called macros. The process is a bit different. It's not just a plain extends call, but in principle, that's what they're doing, building a custom control library for OData v4 based on MDC. And you can do that for every protocol you want.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, then I think I have a last slide. Exactly. I just talked already quite a lot about it. So just to give you a very brief and simplified overview of the architecture, what is in an MDC control, I just choose this slide. You will find the diagram also in our demo kit article about it, our documentation. And there are a few more diagrams, but this one here is, I think, characteristic. You have the outside layer that is the MDC control that more or less incorporates the items aggregation. Let's say, for example, an table has its columns here as items aggregation, and the line items, the rows are more or less a different thing now. We're talking here about the columns. Then you have the delegate, who is asked by the control, give me all the properties you want to show here, which means more or less all the columns. And the delegate checks for its metadata repository, whatever this is, OData v4 meta model or anything else, and then populates an array with property info objects, which reflect the corresponding properties which it wants to show here, passes it back to the control, and the control does some magic and some additional callbacks to the delegate, but this would just unnecessarily complicate the picture here. And in the end, the control adds this newly built columns into the items aggregation, and from then on it takes over and manages it. Why does it manage that? That's because we want to have it enabled for flexibility out of the box. That's why we take control of this management of items aggregation. So there is no custom access. I add a control into my items aggregation. You do this via delegate callback and adaptation later on. Yeah. And yeah, exactly, that's it. Delegate interprets the service metadata, provides these property infos to the control, and provides more or less specific behavior via callbacks. There's a lot of callbacks is defined. Check out the API doc if you're interested on the details here. And yeah, it provides the creation of items itself. So that's what I want to show in the example in a minute. For example, if you want to have certain controls in the column, I'm going to show you how that is being done. I think one slide left with a bit more information. I think I can publish these slides somewhere, then you can find all the references here. And one important thing I want to mention before the demo is we have a session on the Devtoberfest, October 6th, and we are heavily preparing a little workshop here so that you can actually build this or rebuild this example I'm going to show on your own in a tutorial to really get an in-depth understanding of what we're doing here. And I think when you've done that, you really know what the MDC is about, and you can do all the nice stuff I've told you about already. On the left side, you see actually a list report applications. What you might know if you know smart controls, we have a famous filter bar up here, which filters the table down here. The table, which has specific columns for certain formats, formatting, everything's pretty well-known UI5 coding. You can do that with a few 100 lines of code, I think. And one of the, as a unique selling propositions here is the personalization is already there and included and works out of the box. So you can choose some other columns here, press OK. They're added to the table to you as however you want. Same for the filter fields up here. You can rearrange them. You can choose what you want to see there. You can add, for example, another filter field, say whatever height, about 7,000 meters. And then you see less mountains because I don't think we have so many such high mountains in the world. And exactly, and then I can also choose the variant, save it, restore it. And all of these things come out of the box if you do the following things. You need to use an MDC control. This you can see how this is done on the side here. I think one of the last presentations, one of the feedbacks we got was show us a little bit of code on the UI5 con, and I think here we are. You see, we use a dynamic page. Here is a variant management that's up here, just this plain FL variant management connected to the filter bar and the table. And we have a filter bar. This is in here with defined two filter fields. The one you saw initially in the beginning, that's just the plain first view that you see here. You have some additional metadata defined for this specific filter bar instance. It says, okay, we have specific value helps for the name field and the range field. So this is the name field. If I open it, you see we have a sophisticated searchable value help. So usually you only get this out of the box, which is kind of a condition panel, but this is really the whole set of data you can see here. And yeah, some filter fields and so on. And the value helps are loaded via this fragment. And a table below where we define the first initial columns in here. We tell the delegate what is the binding path. So that's more or less the XML. You would say, okay, I can also write that there with just an M table and some input fields, and I get pretty much there. But I think that's not it. There is a lot of logic inside to connect the table and the filter bar to make all those value helps work, to make them also personalizable. And now I'm going to show you more or less the interesting code that you have to provide. This here is just plain configuration of the controls. Let's check out the table delegate first. Okay, what do you need to do in the delegate? We provide already a basic implementation. You can just require it and actually assign and extend another new object, and then you put just the callback functions here. We are defined them. They're in the demo kit. You can check the documentation. What you need to definitely implement is actually also implemented in this example. Like I said, the fetch properties in this version, this is pretty simply done by just querying a module which has a predefined set of metadata. In a sophisticated scenario, this would come from your service, for example. Yeah. So this is a pretty simplified version. You get that metadata, we process it and pass it more or less to the control. Control asks delegate, get me the properties. Here you go. Then we have the add item operation, which is called when you add a new item here from the dialog. You said, I want to add, for example, the countries. Additionally, we would ask the delegate because it's during runtime. Okay, what kind of control do you want here for that aggregation? Just pass us the control. We say we want a column with a text, and here you go. There it is. For the cleanup, we need to have this remove item call, and to initially display data, we need to update or also pass the binding path to the update binding info. And actually, a more or less optional thing was implementing this search functionality here, because the JSON model itself doesn't provide a nice functionality like the OData model or the dollar search. So we have a bit custom kind of search function that we can just, you can just use it here and search. However, your protocol or whatever your service can do, you can just add a search operation here, query the service for whatever, return, and you get, and you can use that as search here. I think this is pretty much it. For the filter bar, it's rather the same. So fetch properties, add item, remove item for the flexibility enablement, for the variant management personalization, a functionality to add a filter field, a kind of a factory function which adds the filter field and checks if there is a value help attached. We could do this by checking this payload, which we pass to the filter bar, if you remember. Here we defined we have actually a value help for this particular filter bar instance and the according field. And the delegate actually can check that and says, okay, here to this field, we need to add a value help, and we know we have the value help. We find in a nice fragment, I show this one, for example, and there is in the end another table and a filter bar in it, which is more or less showing this content. So that's, that's more or less the magic here, checking the value help, add it, return it. So that's actually all you need to do to get a full-blown list report application bound to any protocol. And yeah, as you can imagine, I mean, I can show you quickly something here in our nice interactive demo kit. If we want to, for example, just get the coordinates being kind of a bit more useful, and we say, okay, for something of type coordinate, we would like to do something else. We can, for example, make this template a bit more, okay, this is new, a bit more sophisticated, and by checking if we have coordinates here, I mean, getting the control template up here, checking if we have coordinates, I just use a link and I just bind this to the, I don't know, to a Google Maps link. And usually if I would also choose the coordinates here, I could, if I wouldn't have broken it already. Oh, damn. Give me 1 second. Okay, I think I need to reset something here and do that again. I should be able to, in the end, see a link here instead of just a text column. But it doesn't want to do that for me. Huh. Beginner's mistake. You need to define your dependencies as well, right? And here we go. We also have a nice link now. And all we need to do is check what kind of property type do we have here? Do we want to give it a more or less custom control? Give it a link, for example, and open the link and see we can actually find Mount Everest on the Google map. And that's just it, yeah. But you can imagine if you have some more sophisticated data, you want to provide some more sophisticated control here, this is the way you do it. You can do it either application specific or very generic and just wrap this whole whatever your own MDC table with a specific protocol-specific delegate and offer it as a reuse element to application developers, for example, or just for your own convenience. That's pretty much it.
So basically, you would then in this custom delegate for a strange protocol, you would basically check the kind of metadata also you have, whether it tells you that this column should be displayed as link or whether the data is of type URL or so. And then you say, okay, now so in this case, I want to have a link, right?
Exactly.
And by this, your table becomes, or the MDC table becomes smart regarding that strange protocol.
Absolutely, yeah, that's it. So really, you can tie the look and feel of this. I mean, in the let's say a frame that the MDC controls give you, you can customize whatever is shown there. Yeah, and it's completely personalizable still. So you can still remove those coordinates. Yeah, you can store this as a new variant. And yeah, this is everything executed out of the box and works for you. You don't need too much more than implement a delegate. And for sure, this can get pretty complicated for Fiori elements. I know the implementations of delegates are really hugely complex because they also have this complex kind of metadata where you can define a lot, but you can think of more simple scenarios, like have a JSON schema that just defines one form, for example, and you can just interpret it and provide a certain data type, let's not say form, and provide the according controls for a table to display it. Form is a good point. We don't have a form yet, but I think it's would be also probably a very good addition to the framework and might be an interesting case and something to do for the future. But at the moment, we're having like filter bar, table. We have a link, we have a chart, which is not yet open source ready, or it's not open source ready because it relies on an SAP UI5 chart. Yeah, and certain utilities and tools. Yeah.
Speaking of open source, everything is in Open UI5, what you just showed, right?
Everything we see is in Open UI5. Like, yeah, actually, I'm having the nightly open, which contains the latest sources to our example, which are the best one to look at. And yeah, exactly. Like for the chart, I'm also thinking about, I mean, some kind of a little prototype where we could show and explain how to incorporate a custom control chart, something from a third party, into the MDC chart. I mean, the architecture allows for that, but this is one of the examples where we're just, I mean, working on establishing for the UI5 2.0. We're still on the experimental side, right? And but for the stable release, I think we can come up with more examples in that direction, which also showcase that.
There's another question now from Michael Geising. Are there any basic requirements? Like, does MDC work with every UI5 version?
I mean, it's experimental since 1.1.15, I think. And as of then, you can use it, but I would actually, for trying it out, it's ready basically. Take the latest version you can find, it's best. But for productive usage, I would wait for the 2.0 release and use it as of then. You can still start with development. There might be minor changes because of deprecations, which we want to do which you would have to migrate then adopting 2.0, but they should not be they should not be causing too much effort. So if you want to start prototypical development already, I think that is not a problem. Mind that little migration effort to the 2.0, which might come.
So basically MDC is a library containing some controls, which is part of UI5. So it comes with the same UI5 version you're having. So you can't like use 1.38 or so and get MDC on top. So it's basically part of the UI5 version you have. And as Benedikt says, the latest ones are good to try, but not earlier ones. And 2.0 is planned for when is another question.
So yeah, this is, let's say, still subject for internal alignments on our end. It's roughly, so the current internal plans is roughly March 24.
Any other questions to Benedikt? Anything else you want to add, Benedikt?
No, just try it out. Let us know if you have some interesting projects. I would love to have a look at it and check with you whatever feedback you might have. And yeah, just check out the examples, check the documentation. A lot of resources are mentioned in the PowerPoint. I think I'm just gonna try to upload this somehow with a recording later on. And yeah, no, that's it from my side. Thanks already.
Almost, because there's one more question. Does it provide analytical capabilities?
Oof, not by itself. I think the analytical capabilities usually would come by the service. I mean, I would see it as a feature of, for example, the OData v4 service might offer in the future and might have. The control library itself is not very analytical.
Okay. Thanks. Then
I made the statement I made for version 2 was SAP UI5, and for Open UI5, we will see it in Q4. Just this as correction.
the Open UI5 is a sort of 2.0 preview.
Exactly, preview. The 90 version of Open UI5 will be shared, I think, in November. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, so now I take over sharing to cover the second part of the presentation today. So I will talk a little bit about the CAP story, so this cloud application programming model, and what we provide as SAP to improve your development experience in this environment. So if you look into CAP itself, it's a set of tools, libraries, frameworks, which are provided to give you a great environment to develop cloud applications. And in there are several different development tools. So we have the UI5 CLI tooling, we have the CDS Serve or the CDS server tooling, we have Fiori tools and so on, and App Router and whatever. And all these tools are somehow developed individually and don't play well together. And that was also the case why we showed at the UI5 Con. So Daniel Hutzel from CAP side, Tobias Queck from Fiori tool side, myself from UI5 side, that we are working on melting somehow the tools together. And in the meantime, a lot of have been improved in that environment. We showed an early preview or this preview at that point of time. And what I want to show you now is what's the current state and how you can improve or make use of that to improve your development experience. So let's start with the bookshop example. So I take it really from the Cloud CAP samples, this bookshop itself. And I already prepared my workspace here. I have a Visual Studio Code set up with this bookshop application as is. And I run already npm install, so I can start it directly to see how it looks like. So it is this default CAP structure having an app folder. In this case, I renamed just the view to bookshop -view because later we will add a little bit more. And then there is the DB part, the database, the schema, and so on, and the service part of the CAP server, and a little bit of testing around. But let's look first inside. So this is the CAP server as is now, this bookshop server. And it has 3 endpoints. The browse is the endpoint which is most interesting for us because we use that now to develop a little bookshop application against that. So here, by default, it comes with this view application. So subject to be changed. I think in future we will add the UI5 by default, hopefully. So we contribute that. But anyhow, it shows just how this looks like. So you have a little search. You can search for books. And then you can also, if you click on them, order your exemplary. So just log in. And then, that's a bit how this flow looks like. So now I add my UI5 application to that. So I prepared already one to not spend too much time encoding the UI5 application. And I paste this one inside of the app folder. By doing so and restarting the server, I should now be able to also find this bookshop UI5. And it found 2 of my entry pages, the index HTML and the index CDN. So index HTML obviously doesn't work, because in the HTML page, we refer to UI5 relative to this application. So this is something which doesn't work out of the box inside the CAP server. That's typically why many people are using then the CDN URLs to develop the UI5 application and build it or develop it really as a static web application here inside. So if I go back and run it with index CDN, it works. So it's the same content. It looks like the view application. I can also go in there and can order a book, and then also the stock is decreased. So all the things are working, but I need the CDN for that. And that's also one of the limitations, that this application is now covered as a pure static application here inside. And that's a little bit the thing which is bad. And in order to develop it really as a UI5 application, you require the UI5 tooling. That's why we came up with the idea to add a little plugin. And with the openness of the CDS server to add plugins, we can now install a custom plugin to that environment. It's the CDS plugin UI5. You add it as a dev dependency. In the meantime, I just go here and we can, that's the ecosystem where it's being developed, but I want to go to the npm.js. And there, let's open the CDS plugin UI5. So it comes also with some description on how to use it. And basically, it's very simple, as you have seen. You just add it as a dependency, you install it to your project as a dev dependency, and then basically that's it. So it had happened already in the background, so I'm able to start now the server again. But before I do so, there is one little thing you have to know. If it's a UI5 application, then you need to ensure that npm install is now running in, because it requires a dependency. So typically in the CAP server, what you should do in this case is to add a workspaces, an npm workspaces configuration. And with this npm workspaces configuration, you can now register all apps from the app folder to be also covered. So if you run npm install, and that's an npm package in that folder, it now also ensures that the dependencies of this application are being installed properly. So now I can start my development server, again, my CAP server. And once here, and I refresh without disabled cache, now you see here the UI5 is flagged here behind these links. This means here UI5 server is now running behind the scenes. So if you click on that link, so the index.html, remember, it didn't work. It works now because all UI5 middlewares are now running, including the default middlewares from the UI5 tooling serving the static framework content as well. And with that,
so that's basically the difference. Normally in CAP, you just have HTML pages which can load JavaScript, and that's it. But now you have an active UI5 tooling running.
Exactly. Basically, they have a static Express server in there. And now you have really, with a router, the UI5 tooling running behind the scenes for you. And you can also now benefit from all the features it has.
Thanks.
Okay. So, what it also is now interesting for, because all that was the little bit of trigger point. You remember that we announced that we have the TypeScript support for UI5, and therefore we need this server because you need to have live transpiling for that. So I add now a second application. This is the same application as we have seen here, but now it comes with TypeScript. And if we look into that, it requires to run a transpile task, and even the middleware transpile middleware step, in order to, for sure, provide you these JavaScripts. So if I run now npm install again, it's now automatically in the app folder. App folder content will be detected automatically via the CDS plugin UI5, and with the workspace now the dependencies will be installed properly. So what I can do now is to run exactly this application as well in my CDS server. And I benefit, it starts up, yeah, now it's here. And if I look now into the home of that, I see now also the bookshop UI5 TS is being there. So this is now the TypeScript application. And if I click there, it also loads. And without having this functionality of UI5 server behind the scenes, we wouldn't be able to load here this component TS file, which is the one which is being generated. This one, which is being JS file, which is being generated by the transpilation. So you can also see, if I do now a modification here in this TypeScript application, because we have here also the live reload middleware running behind the scenes, that immediately this leads to a refresh of the application. So I say alert, hello UI5ers, save, and now here the retrigger for the load happens and the alert comes. So all that is working now seamless because of the connection of the toolings. So one thing which is also now possible. So this is one option now what you can do, that you put everything inside of one application here, of one CDS application, and then with that workspace configuration, you can do it running. But maybe also in future, it may be interesting to separate your projects a little bit more and move the UI projects out of the this app folder, because you develop that in a separate repository or wherever. And therefore you want to split that a bit more. So we put that now aside of this project. And what we do as well is we now make a workspace here, an NPM workspace for the whole, for this whole project set up here, or for this folder structure. Here I need to now add as well to the packages, the apps packages / bookshop / app. So with that, I can now run npm or install in the root, and it will take care to install the dependencies for these two projects and for all the projects which are in the app folder. So I go now 2 levels up. So for me now, this is the entry point. And so if I start the server now, this TypeScript application will disappear. Oops, did I do something wrong? I need to say npm start. And in the workspace, I start this cap hire bookshop. This is the name, the npm package name of this cap server project here. So this one here. So now, if the server starts again, you see it disappeared. So I don't have this TypeScript application anymore inside. But this plugin, the CDS plugin UI5, is also be able to detect dependencies. So what you can do as well now is adding a dev dependency to, let's say, the bookshop UI5 TS, so which is in this workspace inside. And I refer to that with the file URLs. Just copy that one. And so start this, install for sure, because then it connects properly from npm perspective. And now if I start that again, what happens now is that it finds this dependency and it lists it again. And then you benefit for sure again from the same support like before, that if you change now something here inside, so let's make that a little bit smaller aside, let's go again in here, and I go to my app and remove this alert again, and add something to the view, hello UI5ers, XXX. So then I see immediately also this changing appear here. So also this is working, and this offers you now a great possibility, because you can now restructure your applications in the way you want. You can set up monorepos, you can split it up in individual projects. And this is now this one perspective which I showed also at the UI5Con, and which worked out. But due to the update of the CAP server, one thing which didn't work was the way around, because typically if you consumed a CAP server application standalone inside, for example, this bookshop UI5 part, then what you had to do for that is, and what many of us used, is this proxy approach. So you use a simple proxy, then you start the CAP server behind the scenes, you connect it via that. But isn't that a bit nasty? And therefore we have also a new additional middleware. And this additional one, this is the UI5 middleware CAP. This is also an extension for the UI5 tooling. And you also need to add it just as a development dev dependency for your project, and then register the config or configure it in your UI5 YAML. So let's show that to you. So the vice versa way. I remove the dependency from that to avoid the cyclic dependency. And what I do now is I have in my bookshop application, I add now the dependency to the UI5 middleware CAP. And so 313. And I throw out a simple proxy. I don't need that one anymore. And in the UI5 YAML, just use the CAP. And there is now one specialty. Normally it finds the server by default because it has a .cdsrc JSON, but this CAP server doesn't have one. So you need to add a little configuration in this one. And it says, what is the name of the package, the npm package, which contains the CAP server, and this is here in this case the this CAP hire bookshop. So if I now run here npm install, the dependencies will be properly set up. One thing I missed in order to find it. So besides the CAP, I need to also for sure have a dependency to this bookshop server here inside. And I do it again with the file URLs. Bookshop, thank you. Bookship is also nice. That's the bookshop folder. And now if I run npm install, so the connection between the projects should properly happen. And now let's start this bookshop. Oh, I should have selected shorter names. TS. So this is now starting our TypeScript application leading with the UI5 server. And you see it's already starting up here. And it asked me already for my username, my credentials. So here it's properly connecting. And now with that, I can also directly look into the services, because all the services coming from the CAP server are now available here inside. For that I need a different permission, but for the browse I have now also here this data source available, and I didn't have to configure anything besides just adding the CAP server as a dependency and using the UI5 middleware CAP to connect to that server, and then the routes are properly registered. And all that, what happens here behind the scenes in both directions, is that it uses always one or the other server, either the CDS server or the UI5 server as the leading server running the express. And behind the scenes, routers, express routers are created to connect then, or to integrate natively in that environment the other middlewares from the other service to run them under the hood in the proper path as expected. And with that, you get really a seamless setup for your CAP development environment that you can play around with, with that in one or the other direction. Have a UI5 leading first setup or have a CAP leading first setup. And you can also benefit in both cases from the domain-specific functionality of these servers without configuring anything besides that what you have to do in these domains nevertheless. And that's it, and you are good to go.
Okay, that's very cool. So to summarize, basically, there are three cool things now shown by Peter. First, you can have the UI5 tooling running inside a standard CAP application. And the second thing is you can separate the projects and not mix them together and still consume either CAP in a UI5 app or UI5 in a CAP app, just by more or less an NPM dependency in some configuration.
Exactly. And yeah, especially that was very important to reuse the configuration by the other projects to avoid that you have to do redundancies.
There's a raised hand now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, first of all, great work, Peter, as usual. And I'm currently also heavily using it so far, because it feels very nice, and it just easier, and you have this new kind of workflow for doing things. So from my point, I think of just some small questions to the feature so far. In some cases, even from the starting point, if you have a lot of packages inside your monorepo, for the first initial step, calling the stuff and waiting for it, maybe it would be also good later on, maybe to have an option, if you are just working some of the packages, maybe that you can have some kind of launch configuration so that it does not try to invest on all dependencies, because in some situation it can take some time, and even some doing some restart stuff at the moment. Mm-hmm. It's also sometimes behaves a little bit critically in some situations. And another nice feature from my side would be, because if you later want to deploy your app folder to the HTML5 repository, at the moment I have always two index HTML files, one for the local development stuff, because I think the HTML5 server uses the virtual directory with this dot notation from the manifest ID. But in the final result, in the HTML5 rep, all the package dependencies will be, the dot will be replaced so that we have a different naming. It would be great if we have an option, because if we later on wants to deploy to the HTML5 repo, that we maybe can use the internal virtual directory structure the same way like in the HTML5 repo, so that we just remove the dot, and then we can just have the same index HTML file with the resource dependencies, so that we do not have to maintain two index HTML files with the different resources at the end.
So maybe you can share that with me also on an extra thread. It would be interesting to learn about that. We are also looking at the moment into the deployment scenarios for that to even make that streamlined as well. And there is also one thing which I didn't show so far, but which have been developed by Nicolas Schoelch. It's the staff up router approach, where it goes also a little bit in that direction. But maybe that's something we have to show extra in that round, because this opens the next dimension of that to also connect the app router with this CAP, with UI5 tooling to make a seamless experience for that. And by the way, just as a side note, because you asked for that separately, the resource navigation also works in the meantime.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, great. So I think it's if you just started using it, you never want to go back to the former experience. But if some small hazards will be fixed so far around this stuff, and also maybe some conflict ops on top of it, especially with working with the transpiling stuff. But also one thing, something figured out is there was some problems if you started with from the cloud tooling, so generating the TypeScript projects with the Yeoman templates. For me, always the templates are generating the old namespace from SAP, and it doesn't work for me out of the box for whatever reason, and I've always to change the CDN to sap.ui5.com because there's.
Holger, we should collect these points separately, and then maybe step-by-step work on that, because also timing is running out. And
yeah, we're a bit over time, so thanks a lot for the good feedback, and you two connect together, and we'll hear in the next UI5ers Live, we'll probably hear about the results because both of you will be here. The next UI5ers Live will take place in October, on October 12th, as always on 3:15 Waldorf time. And there will be two topics. So one is UI5 flexibility. What's new there? There was a session at UI5Con, but it couldn't be recorded for some technical reasons. So for those who missed it, that's the chance to get updates on UI5 flexibility. And the second session, or the other session, will be from Holger Schäfer, whom you have heard already now, a well-known UI5 community member, who will present the WordPress quick start template he has built using UI5 web components. So we'll hear from both of you next time on October 12th anyway, and probably also get a short update on what you just discussed.
Yeah.
Okay. So thanks a lot to everyone who attended for your interest, and of course, special thanks to Benedikt and Peter for presenting. Hope to see all of you again soon in October, hopefully, and bye.
See you then. Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.